I hear a lot about the great resignation, but those I mentor and work with have been facing a much different reality, the great rejection. Companies' current hiring practices unwittingly reject millions of U.S. workers, as many as 27.4 million, leaving today's best and brightest with inboxes full of rejection letters. Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk because today's guest believes these professional snubs can teach us far more than success can.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
Today's guest, Dr. Eli Joseph, is an author, an educator, and a TEDx speaker who currently serves as a faculty member at Columbia University and Queens College. Using rejection to fuel his professional achievements, by age 24, he earned a doctorate degree while teaching at an Ivy League institution. And his new book, The Perfect Rejection Resume, A Reader's Guide to Building a Career Through Failure, compiles lessons about failure from his own life experiences and those of 7 influential thought leaders. Welcome to the show, Eli.
Thank you for having me on, Rob. I really appreciate the intro.
Well, you bet. And we got a lot of work to do because I really want to carve into some of the things you're saying here. I know with managers, for me, and I tell people that I'll learn more from a bad manager than a good manager, sadly, because sometimes the good managers, they're somewhat seamless. So although we're experiencing a very nice reality, we don't really know what they're doing necessarily. But when you've been with somebody that's been difficult and you feel the pain and the sometimes the embarrassment, these are lessons that stay with us. So I'm a fan of rejection somewhat. But your story is an incredible one. What I've read is you personally overcame more than 1,500 educational and professional rejections, and yet you used them to become successful. How in the world did you not lose hope?
Well, I know that all it takes is just one. All I need is one opportunity. So even if I'm shooting and I've missed, this is not basketball or any other sport where you've missed so much and then you get subbed out the game. This is real life. So when you shoot so much and all you need is just one with that mindset, I will continue to compile rejection. I'll make a note of that. And I'll always keep a note to myself. It's a mental note that you're going to hear from me one day. Those who rejected me, they will hear from me one day, one way or another. And, it's not holding a grudge or holding some type of animosity towards them. It's just that you're going to hear from me one day and the tables will reverse. So I always believe in tables reversing and the tables will turn per se, where, someone who have not hired me or did not hire me in the past will hire me in the future.
Right. Right. No, and I get that part. The very first book I ever wrote is called How to Run Seminars and Workshops. And I've never told this story before, but I had been teaching. I was 23 years old. It was much earlier in my career. I was teaching flood insurance, and I did a program, and one of the government evaluators wrote on a participant guide. And I counted them, 72 comments, and 71 of them were negative. And I almost gave it up. I thought maybe this isn't the right field for me. I'm not really good at this. Anyway, some years later, I wrote my book, How to Run Seminars and Workshops. I found that person's address, and I didn't dedicate it. I wrote their name in there, to, the person's name was Gloria. I don't think I'm giving too much to Gloria, thanks for the inspiration. And I shout it right in that mailbox. So I get the part about fueling. And I think you said something important, which is it's not necessarily anger. It more inspired me than made me angry. Is that where you're coming from, Eli?
Yes, it's funny because I'll also share another story as well. The genesis behind the book, it came from a comment, a similar comment. So last year around June, there was a Forbes column that came out and it featured my work in academia. And in the comment section, someone responded saying, it's so easy for him to talk about academia. Ivy League by the age of 24. He got it so easy. He has a silver spoon. So why should Forbes even interview this guy? Right? And I'm like, okay, no problem. I'll keep that mental note. And I said, you know what, there's a lot more negative, experience that I've had in the past rather than positive. I've been rejected so many times and I failed so many times. So I guess this is where the book comes into light, because people don't know until you let them know what's going on. And in social media, we're so used to just sharing our positive. We're so used to sharing our highlights, but we don't spend time to share our lowlights. And people tend to gravitate towards that authentic story as well.
I agree with you. I wrote a piece one time called The Pursuit of Imperfection, of how much more relatable that is and how much pressure we put on ourselves to be perfect. Even if you could achieve it and still be mentally sound, I question whether people can even relate to it. As a professional speaker, I only went through one slump and I couldn't understand why my evaluations were going down. I was getting better and better at what I was doing. And I flew another Xerox instructor out who I respected. And he said, you're coming off almost too perfectly. You seem to know every answer to every question. And the moment that I softened up a little bit and didn't have to be the smartest guy in the room and humbled myself a bit, right back up went the evaluations again. So it's a lesson to us all, I guess, that we can learn from rejection and embrace it. I'm just very impressed you were able to embrace over 1,500 of them. How about when you wrote your book? How many rejections did you receive from that book?
I mean, I'm still getting rejected right now, actually. um, even when the book is out.
No, you're good. I had one that came like a year and a half later. I'm laughing because they're not done yet. They're still coming, but
not at all. They're not done. And even when I talked about not only just the publication side, where as far as the traditional publishers, but when I'm writing pieces and articles, right, and when I'm trying to pitch off the New York Times, I'm getting rejected there too. Yeah. I'm getting rejected as far as my piece and my articles that's coming out. So as far as my writing skills, they're pretty decent, right? I just published a book, but a lot of people and a lot of publishers, they may not gravitate towards it, and that's okay. That's the idea of the resume. This is why I say it's perfect to someone's idea. It's okay. It's totally fine to get rejected. If I was not rejected by so many, like if I were not rejected by so much organization, institution, I would not have a story. I would not be here. Right. So it's totally fine. I let people know it's okay to fail. It's totally fine. It's actually a part of your story. And the more you fail, the more you're good at failing. It's also a complete opposite. You will succeed much more.
Right. And I want people to hear those words that you just heard. Part of your story. I agree with you. It is. It's part of our story that, going up that big mountain it's an exciting story to tell. It's not that exciting when somebody just gives you an elevator ride up the mountain. In other words, well, I'll write it for you and I already know this and that. Well, congratulations, you're an author, but that's not the way it usually works. That's not the way life works. So just very impressive. I feel like we're kind of cut from the same cloth here. I'm smiling. Folks, you can't see. Actually, both of us are smiling right now in this conversation because this is not a depressing conversation for people who put themselves out there. Listen, when we stay safe, good news is you don't have to worry about being rejected, but who wants to live a life of safety?
Like it's okay. And once again, when I tell people that it's okay, they're like, "You sure?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm sure. You'll make it out alive. It's totally fine to get a no every now and then." And this goes to the point within the book. And I said that rent is due every day. When I say rent is due every day, we're talking about your landlord, which is your goals. Those are your goals. You have a new landlord every now and then. You have to sign a new lease. And you have to pay rent every single day. And that rent, the currency of rent is your effort. So whether you succeed or whether you fail, as long as you put forth that effort, you're still paying off your rent. And most people don't believe that, it's okay to fail because once again, you're so used to just putting it underneath the rug. We're so used to just, shoving up the rug and not worried about it. We're told to, worried about the positive, worry about, finding ways to succeed. And not focusing on and not forgetting the lessons that we learned from our failures.
Yeah.
And that's basically where that, that's why it's important to have that resume, the rejection resume.
Yeah, I hear you. But then you take it further. You you're like rejection on steroids, because you also write about and talk about that the lessons learned from our failures, that it's time to promote them, that you almost like to promote them. Walk me through that, because that was a part where I you had me until there, and I said, man, this guy is really utilizing, these failures. Talk to me about how.
It's more so of a reverse tactic. It's a marketing tool. You can use it, but it's a reverse tactic. And how I think about it is, if you're winning so much, right, and you succeed, right, and you post it, I'm pretty sure you have comments saying, oh, well, what about this? What about this? Oh, you may not. And they pick and choose. They nitpick on the negatives to try to bring that negative side out. Okay, well, what if I show you all of my negative story and all of my negative experience? What you gonna say now? Or so it's like, what you gonna say if once I say, yeah, I've been rejected at Columbia. And when people say, yeah, rightfully so, you didn't deserve to be at Columbia. Well, I'm at Columbia University right now. I'm teaching. So it's more so of a reverse tactic where I want to show you my negative side, so you can't use it against me.
Right.
That's why I dive in deep. I go in deep into the rejection aspect, because if I tell you about my rejections, you can't use that against me. You can't dox me into a situation where I'm just basically posting up my positive stories, my success stories. I post my negative stories, my failures, my rejection. And then you can say, okay, have you ever succeeded? And then I can say, yeah, I've succeeded before. Here's my story on the opposite spectrum of, my life, as far as if I succeeded or if I failed. That's why it's important. I dive into that. I'm confident in my failure as well.
Right. Well, you certainly do sound very confident. Yeah, you're like a subject matter expert on failure. And don't take a swing at me for that. I think it's a compliment. So, but I just met with a bunch of people today. They were all going through interviews, etc. How about in an interview? I certainly think that a conversation about rejection is okay, but how deep do you recommend we dive in if we're face to face with a recruiter or with a hiring manager?
All right. Now, at this point, we have to be very careful. We don't want to go in too deep about failures, because you don't want to give that wrong impression. Now, if the hiring manager is following you on LinkedIn, if they're following you on social media, which is possible that they may follow you on LinkedIn, or they may reach out to as an invite on LinkedIn, and you share that story, it depends on the time and place. LinkedIn is fine, but during an interview, it may not be a good idea. Right. So if you're at an interview, right, you can go in and you can basically scrape the top of the mountain, as far as just talking a little bit about your rejection, how you overcome that. That basically gives them the impression that you can overcome failure. You don't want to go in too deep, because you will have a dark and negative conversation. Right. However, if you share your stories about rejection and failure on LinkedIn, and it goes viral, it can give that positive impression, where to the hiring managers, you may have that positive, the positive awareness around you, and you also have a good network. So and I tell people, if you want to share your resume, do not share your rejection resume online as with the employers. Don't share with your employers. Share it online with everyone else. Right. And share your resume with your employers as well.
Yeah. I work with a guy, and I love he has a process. It's called whenever we're dealing with difficult things, it's called a factual, positive, factual. And no, let me reverse that. Actually, it's called a positive, factual, positive. There we go. And what it does is and we could use it sort of for the conversation we're having right now. To bring up rejection in an interview, I don't think is the end of the world. I think what I'm hearing you say, Eli, is we don't have to live there, and we don't have to overdo it. but it's a very human part of that. And to apply a positive, factual positive would be say, working with X company was one of the greatest experiences of my life. The fact is that the company went through a reorganization and jobs were, and so mine was. But I'll always look back with and then they put something positive back on it. So I'm dealing with rejection in a sense, but I'm not dealing with it of, they never really got to know me. I'm a good guy. It's not wine, factual wine. It's positive, factual, positive. And so, and I think that's powerful because we all have that. How many, with me, I work with a lot of people. There are gaps. There is an ageism issue, whereas I call it just an ism issue. There's all sorts of isms out there: racism, baldism, ageism. But to deal with the tough stuff in a very positive way, I think is powerful. We don't have to run from it, but we also don't have to dwell on it. As a salesman, when we get an objection, I don't mind asking you questions about why you're asking me about a particular issue. When it comes time to talk, and I'm curious about your feedback on this, because not everything in sales translates over. But in sales, when we're getting an objection, when we're in a difficult area, my rule of thumb is once it's your turn to talk, briskly and quickly, the longer you stay on this, the more life you breathe into the objection. So sometimes that hiring manager or that recruiter, it's not that big a deal. They're just coming down a list. But in our head, we go, oh no, it's the Columbia thing again. And we get too wrapped up into too long a story, and we've created the objection. What are your thoughts of that? Does that translate over into what you're saying?
Yes. So what you're basically saying, I call it more so of a self-inflicting mistake that we're making, where, it's okay to talk about our mistakes. It's okay to make that mistake. You don't want to make that mistake twice, or you don't want to dwell in that mistake and live in there, because once you live in that mistake, you can't live in misery, right? And rejection and failure, it sounds like a miserable concept, but you don't want to live in that. You just have to take on the positive lessons from those experiences and then move it forward. Failing forward is important more rather than failing behind in your misery.
We have a book title of Failing Forward and out there yet?
No, I don't know.
Yeah. You know what you're going to do when we finish this podcast? Go grab that. I may cut it out, although now everyone's hearing me talk about it. But in any case, that's very powerful. I think that's really interesting. Failing forward. It's when you mentioned that for me, and I used to do some hiring interviews for Xerox. I never minded hearing somebody who had an issue. But once I heard it a second time, once I heard the same scenario with a second company, what scared me off was, am I dealing with a victim here? And that worries me. We all have issues. We all work through them, as you have done, as you basically picked yourself up by your bootstraps and made yourself greater for them. But when we take that victim chair, that's what scares me. In other words, their fault. I didn't do anything wrong. It's kind of the mantra of a victim. It wasn't, I didn't do anything. It was them. Really? I'll
also say this. It's also another concept in the book too, that you have to put the blame on yourself. It's not your fault that things may not go your way. The weather may be bad. Traffic sucks on the way to work. Things that you can't avoid, right? It's inevitable. As far as downsizing within a company, you may be off the hook. As far as you may get terminated, which is fine. It's not your fault, but you have to put the blame on yourself. You have to hold yourself accountable. Once you hold yourself accountable, to your point, I will not be a victim, and I won't make the same mistakes twice.
Right.
So if I failed, I apply 1,500 different ways, right? I'll have to receive 1,500 different lessons from those rejections. It can't be the same one twice, because it means that I didn't learn from my mistakes.
Right. Yeah. You're kind of like the Thomas Edison of job failure in a sense, because wasn't it Edison who had like 1,300 or some crazy number of maybe finish that story off for me. I see you nodding. about the rejections or the mistakes he made working on a light bulb, wasn't it?
Yeah, on light bulb. Yeah, I think it was patents that he was trying to put out, and those applications were getting rejected back to back.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
And he said, I didn't fail. I found 1,200 things that didn't work, or whatever. But it's a very famous quote out there. And I think it kind of breathes life into your philosophy a little bit. Let's move it to the resume, because you write about creating a rejection resume. And I need you to explain that one to me, because resumes are tricky and I'm never sure which one's right. So what do you mean by that?
So we have a traditional resume, which basically highlights our accomplishments, our awards, our experiences, everything that we've accomplished. And we've graduated, so we put that on, graduated from university, we put that on the resume. All of our accomplishments, the goals that we finished. The rejection resume is the complete opposite. It highlights our mistakes and our failures. So in that rejection resume, you're going to see the amount of schools that rejected me, the amount of organizations that rejected me. If I was terminated, if I got fired, that would be on a resume. If I dropped out of school, that would be on a resume. If I was on academic probation, that would be on a rejection resume. If there was organization that basically rejected my application to speak at their conference, that was also added onto the resume. The failures. If I proposed to my girlfriend and I was rejected, right? It's embarrassing, but that's also going to be on my resume.
But that resume doesn't find itself into an employer's hands, does it?
Oh, I see.
What's that?
This is why I said it shouldn't be on an employer's hands.
Okay, good. All right, this just goes on the wall somewhere.
Or it can go on social media.
Okay.
You can share that. You can share that and provide context to, the fact that you may have accomplished so much. However, you can't take away from the fact that you've been rejected, and it was not an easy journey on the way to succeed.
Do you put things like that? Are you on Facebook yourself?
Yes.
Okay. Do you put things like that on your Facebook page?
Yes.
I wish I could reach through the screen and shake your hand. I don't want to be the guy standing out by his front door going, "Get off my yard," and complain about Facebook. But I secretly have always called it brag book. It's just nothing but my children got into a great school. Well, that's wonderful, but my children are really nervous, when that happened, because they were trying to get into great school. My children just got great jobs. We're doing well. Look at us in Tahiti. And it does not inspire, let's put it that way. And I wish, let's you and I will create a platform called Real Book or something. And I don't mind hearing about your successes, but life consists of ups and downs and yings and yangs. And if you really want to share your life with me, just share it evenly. That's all. And I'll do the same. I wish there were more people. I went, way back when I collected my 300 friends or whatever, I wish I'd been more careful and said, yeah, I'll let you in, but I want the real story. I don't want this other story not helping us.
LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, it's the same mindset. Okay. Yeah. People may think that I've said it in the caption, people may think that I've succeeded and I've accomplished so much, but look at this. Look at the real process, the process that got me to where I'm at today.
Yeah.
Look at that. Then be inspired. I'm going to share that. I'm going to share it, not only the resume, but the resume will continue to evolve itself, right? As I continue to try to achieve greatness, I'm going to fail. I'm going to continue to share my failures, the rejections, failures, all the negative experience that I've had. Take the positive lessons from it and then come on the other side and succeed. So I'm sharing both. I'm sharing two coins of the pendulum here, because I know for a fact that it's going to be boring. It's boring to just share positivity all the time.
Right.
Because we know it's not real.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just wish people would understand that it's okay. Share it all. There are certain things I not going to share with people I don't know, but if you're putting it out there, just even it up a little bit. Okay, you talk about bending the rules to your favor. And before we get there, I'm going to, at the end of the show, I'm going to remind people about this book, but it sounds like a great book. Tell me the title again and where can we get it from?
The Perfect Rejection Resume.
Mm-hmm.
That's the title of the book. And you can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Walmart, you name it. It's everywhere.
Good. Online store is great. And how about, is there an audio book for it?
No, that's a good idea. I didn't have an audio version. It's only ebook and paperback.
Okay. Yeah, jump on that. Push back and see if you can get that done. There's just certain people that really love to, just like those who are probably listening to this show, they'd love to hear that in their car or when they're out on a run or something like that. So let me just put that bug in your ear and help us all out, because it sounds like just a terrific book, Eli. And I think people need to read this. There's so many people that are struggling, not just with the job part, but even the Facebook part. And so I just think you really have some very refreshing ideas. All right, but you like to bend the rules. Let's go back to it. I want to hear about how you bend the rules to your favor.
So we know that rules are man-made. Human created the rule. And I'm pretty sure when you're driving out, right? You're driving, you're obeying the rules. What about the cops that are in emergency? And when it's emergency time, they don't have to abide by the rules.
Right.
How come some people can abide by the rules at any given time and then we can't? And when it comes to the professional side, right? We apply the same way that thousands of other people apply. We apply online, we send our resumes in, we go through the interviewing process, and then hopefully we get the offer, right? That's basically the rule. Submit your resume, submit your qualifications, get picked to do the interview, and then get hired. What about someone who comes in who does not need a resume, right? They come in and then they get referral. They get referred, and their profile gets pushed up. They get pushed up the line, right? We have to wait in line. How come someone can skip the line and then get first priority on this opportunity that we are all applying for, right? And in terms of bending the rules, I know that your advisors, your mentors, your sponsors, they can help you bend the rules. Because in the hiring process, right, if you get a referral, I'm pretty sure you will get a higher priority as far as the job goes.
Good. I'm glad you provide. I was just going to pop in with, give me an example, but while you were saying, I was thinking, well, 80 to 85% of the jobs I hear go to network connections. There's certainly some bending of the rules, nothing unethical, but rather than being in that big stack of resumes, we're going to put you in this little stack. You're still going to have to go in and do the job, but we can get you out of in the book world. I don't know if you know this, but with publishers, a lot of them will call it the orphan leads or the orphan manuscripts of those that are just kind of coming in. A lot of publishers are getting a lot of manuscripts. To have a connection of somebody that says, listen, I can at least get it in the editor's hands. I can get it in the hiring manager's hands. The rest is going to be up to you and your resume and all the things you've done, but we're going to get a fair shot at this. You will be seen. That's an example to you of bending the rules.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
And it's predicated upon who you know. So it's not only what you know. What you know is basically a byproduct of understanding the rules of the game. Understanding the rules of the game helps you know what you know.
Right.
Bending the rules and being the exception to the rules, you have to understand who you know and who knows you.
Right. Right.
I can say, I know you, Rob. I know Rob, man. We did a great podcast. But if you don't know me in return, then I will not be able to bend the rule as effectively as I can.
Right.
So this is where networking comes into play, because networking can help you bend the rules in any aspect. Just like in the social aspect, right? There's a long line into the club to get into the club. If you're in a VIP section, you know someone in the VIP section. You don't have to wait online. We don't have to wait in line for that.
Right.
You get access to first access into the club as well. So it's the same in terms of within the professional aspect, where if you know someone and that person knows you, if you know an executive, a chief executive officer, right, it's easier for you to get hired within that organization rather than not knowing anyone else and going in blindly.
Right. And before anybody gets excited here and says, "Well, that doesn't seem fair," I just want you to know that the hiring managers that I know and the editors that I know consider it a favor when I bring them a candidate. So it's this is not a tawdry type of favor here. They're at basically saying, "Can you give me somebody that you vetted out because we're vetting out people and I trust you?" Because I remember thinking at first, I hope I'm not bothering this person by bringing up candidates until they said, "Bothering me, you're helping us." So yeah, we're using the term bending the rules right now, but I really think this is a win. It's one of the reasons why, at least for me, I think most people who are job seekers have a more of a marketing issue than a sales issue. If you have way too many interviews and nobody wants to hire you, you come see me. I'll talk to you about how you're selling yourself. But I see you nodding. Most of us find people, there's nothing in the pipeline. It's a very anemic list of opportunities they're chasing, and they think that they're falling down in the interviews. It's a numbers game, but the numbers go up when we market ourselves better and when we, as you say, bend the rules.
And also, most people don't even know how to market themselves as well. So even using the rejection resume, it's one way to market yourself. You can put yourself out there and say, "Look, I've been through so much," and people tend to gravitate towards that story, and then they may give you an opportunity just because you were brave enough to even share your imperfections here, right? They will say, "Okay, you know what? I'll give you a shot. You seem brave. You seem like you have some form of bravery here and within yourself, and with that, we can translate that into other areas here."
Yeah,
That's all they need for you to market yourself.
that's smart. All right, two more questions. Although I could ask you 10 more, I don't want to hold you up. Uh, in your book, you mentioned that time is your biggest competition. Walk me through that.
So we are when we consider ourselves, or we always talk about ourselves being our biggest competitors.
Mhm.
I hear this all the time. I'm going to compete against myself. I'm competing against the man in the mirror. That's what we always say this. I'm competing against myself and I'm trying to become the best version of myself. That's nice. But if you put a deadline on that, on your competition against yourself, you'll realize that you're competing against time, right? Think of it like this: when you're running track and you're competing against the other guys on the track field, you're competing against yourself and you're trying to become the best version of yourself and get a better time to have your personal best. But you realize that you have to get to that line at a particular time. There's a deadline. This is why I tell people, put a deadline on all of your goals. You have to have a new landlord by a certain amount of time, because you realize that time is constantly evolving, and you will always be behind if you're not basically setting deadlines for your goals and setting deadlines for yourself. This is why I'm always in competition with time, because you never know when time is going to run out.
Yeah.
You never know. Time is your greatest asset, but it's also your greatest competitor here, because you never really know when time will be up. So you want to accomplish as much as you need to accomplish with respect to your rent being due every day. So that way you can optimize your time and manage your time wisely.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. It really does all kind of boil down to time. And I'd like to think that maybe one of the many lessons that we got out of today's podcast is that, why not embrace your failures? Why not, I go sort of change it just a little bit in terms of, don't be afraid to fail. Don't avoid an opportunity because the odds don't look real good, because in the end, we only have so much time. And I would hate, and I know for many of us, it's when fear holds us back that we're really not on our game. Eli, have you ever seen the movie Defending Your Life?
Yes, I actually
You
did.
have. Okay, where the man goes through his version of what death is like,
Mhm.
and he is basically as a defender and a prosecutor, and they're analyzing his life. And the criteria, and the only criteria they're using is, did fear hold you back? Or were you able to overcome your fear and really go for things? It wasn't about success. It was just about not being afraid to try. That movie really stays with me. I think it was a wonderful theme. And I think some of our greatest days are when we, even when we fail, when we go, yeah, but you know what? I laced them up when I tried.
And it's and the thing is, when I say time is your greatest competitor, when it's crunch time,
Yeah.
and you have to be in the clutch. Time is against you right now, and you're in the clutch. You have a different perspective towards your goals. And pretty much when I'm a basketball guy. And the time is winding down. When we look at guys like Michael Jordan and Kobe, we rely on them to make a play. They know it's not only you that they're trying to overcome and beat. They're trying to get as much as they can with a small amount of time. Right. And they're not in survival mode. They need to get it done. They're in kill mode. And I know when time is your greatest competitor, that's when you're in that mode and you're in that zone where there's nothing that could stop you as far as trying to get and overcome, whatever you need to overcome to get what you need to get.
Yeah. Yeah. And, of course, we see all Jordan's great shots and the amazing, but I'm not so sure Jordan is necessarily the first one to mention this, but it's certainly been out there of how many shots he missed at the buzzer, how many pressure shots he missed. But that's not the reason why we don't even really need to dwell on that, is because that's not in Michael Jordan's mindset. He wants the ball, and he knows that because he's well trained as an athlete, that more likely than not, he'll be successful, but no success is guaranteed. And again, I think that sort of translates into where we are right now, which is, we're not telling you you're not going to fail, but we're telling you is you certainly don't want fear to hold you back. Just to, not be afraid of being rejected. The topic is a wonderful topic. I really can't wait to get a look at this book of yours. Just so you know, the publicists always offer to send me books. I refuse them all because when I really like a guest like you, I want to buy the book so I can give you a verified review on that book. It sounds like a terrific book that's really going to be very helpful to a lot of people. One last question for you, and I'll let you go. We're talking about different failures. Tell me one of the biggest failures, not that frequency one, but give me one last failure that you've had that you learned from.
When I was in undergrad, I took 7 classes in one semester. It was a lot. It was 21 credits.
Right.
I failed 2 classes. I remember failing linear algebra. I was a math major, so I remember failing linear algebra and probability and statistics. What I learned from that experience is you may be on the verge of academic probation, but if you, within time, right, with time being your greatest competitor, you can graduate the very next semester, despite the fact that you are at the end of your second year of college. You're sophomore, about to become a junior. You failed 2 classes, but then you still graduated 1 year later. It's possible. Another thing that I learned from that experience is, you never know that the lessons, the classes that you failed in will probably be the classes that you will need the most upon graduation. Because I'm teaching stats right now, and right. I failed stats. So just understanding that, I think that was the turning point in my life, because I was facing academic probation. I was on the verge of getting kicked out of Queens College, but I ended up graduating, and I took 10 courses the next semester, 30 credits, and I did well. So that experience alone, that was my greatest by far. Without the frequency, like the amount is just that moment. That was that turning moment, that turning point in my life where I had to, it's all or nothing at that point.
Yeah. Excellent. And you know what? How we started, that's your story. That's the part that net funny, that part fuels you. That's a story you want to tell your children. And again, our lives to our children and our loved ones aren't Facebook lives. They're real lives. And that's a real story. And thank you for telling that. That's powerful. If we had more time, I'd tell you one of mine, but I'm sorry. Looks like we're about out of time here, or at least I'm saying we're out of time. Listen, folks, the book is The Perfect Rejection Resume, a reader's guide to building a career through failure, which I think is really interesting. And one more time, how can people get a hold of you, Eli?
You can contact me. My handle is the same on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat. It is DRELIJOSEPH, Dr. Eli Joseph. Same as my website as well, DRELIJOSEPH. And I'm available anywhere. I like to talk and engage with people and provide some inspiration. So feel free to connect with me here at this podcast and beyond here.
Perfect. And I'll have all your contact information on our page as well. So if you're listening to this, just go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you're going to see show notes for the venue you're using, and you'll be able to find his information there too. Eli, terrific conversation. Really grateful for the time that you spent with us today. And I really applaud your honesty. Your information is great, but your honesty is off the charts. And you taught me a few lessons today. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Rob. I really appreciate you.
You bet. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.